Alright, so again, for today's topic, we'll talk about arrays in PHP. So what exactly are arrays? Why is it important in the web development? How do we use them? And basically, how are we going to write an array, or how are we going to define an array in PHP language? So again, if you have any questions or clarifications, please share it with the class so we'll be able to address it. Okay, so previously we've talked about the data types, the different data types of PHP. We've discussed a few data types. We have strings, integers, and floats. One of the data types of PHP is what we call an array or arrays, and that will be what we're going to discuss today. So this is going to be our ninth lesson. So lesson number 9, PHP arrays. So what exactly is an array? An array is a special variable which can hold more than one value at a time. The values, called objects, are ordered and integer indexed. So when we say from term suggests is a special variable. So basically it's the same variables that we've been discussing for the past, last meeting or the past 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. We've discussed about variables. An array is just another variable. Okay, nawala ko. Madungog lang ko balik, guys. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir.
Kuan magod. They try to reconnect magod ang ako ang screen. But anyway, that's good. Again, array is just another, basically it's a special variable. So it's a variable. When we say variable, something, or basically it can store information. It can store data so we can use it for our program. So an array is just like that. However, it is special in a way that an array can hold more than one value at a time. Diba? If you can remember in our previous meeting, when we say variable, it can only store one data, right? For example, variable integer na, let's say age, it will only store one variable or one value, which is the age. So for example, you're going to create another variable for your name. So if we're going to write a value for that variable, it should be one only, which is your name. However, arrays can have multiple values. So aside from, that's why it is special variable, because it can store multiple value at the same time. Unlike variable, just the regular variable that can store only one. Alright? So the values for a variable, for an array, is called objects, and ordered and integer index. So when we say ordered, basically since you have multiple value on your variable and an array, you have to make sure that those variables or those values are ordered. Diba? Kasi since daghan man ang value nga gibutang sa imong array, kinahanglan nimo siyang i-order. Meaning, you can either write it, let's say, you're going to order it with a number, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nana. Or you can also set it with a specific name for each value. Alright, so we'll talk more about it later on. So just remember, arrays are like variables. However, arrays can store multiple value at the same time, and it is ordered and integer index. When we say integer index, it is numbered with number. Mura ba siya gilist siya with numbers, di ba? Integers are numbered man. So let's say ang ihang value sa mga array is ordered with an integer. Gi-order siya with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. Okay, so if we're going to compare it to a non-programming terminologies or analogies, array is like, for example, you're going, especially nag-adult na kunuhay ka. I'm not sure if you're doing this since you're still studying, but most adults, I will not say that I am included, but most adults will ilang bahigon ang ilahang mga monthly bills. So for example, we're going to arrange our monthly bills, and we're going to arrange them, or we're going to kanabang ato siyang i-store nato siya with inside folders. Alright, so for example, you have 5 monthly bills. We have water bills, electric bills, internet bills, car payments, mortgage, so on and so forth. So how are you going to store it? So you're going to we'll be using folders. So let's say Your water bills will be, let's say, ibutang nimo sa folder number 5, kana, and then the electric bills imo siyang isulod sa folder number 4. Your internet bills will be stored in folder 1. Your car payments or motorcycle payments will be stored in folder number 3, and your mortgage will be let's say stored in folder number 2, diba? So now that you've stored your bills on specific folder, you can also pick it out. Let's say ganahan kung tanaw na ako i-review na ako ang bills for, let's say, mortgage. So I'm just going to open up folder number 2, di ba? So basically these folders are numbered. If you can see, these folders are numbered because an array are ordered and integer indexed, meaning ginamberan siya ang mga folder. So you just have to open a specific folder. All right, it's called objects, by the way. I'm just relating a non-programming analogy. But for example, ganahan ko ngayon, please open up the folder number 1 so we can see the water bills. Inana ba? So for you to be able to access those values nga imong gi-store in these objects, you have to use the number of, or the index, diba? So that is similar to an array. So for you to be able to access the objects, the value inside the object, you have to call which index that object belongs to. And unsa gali ang index in this example? Asa ani ang index? Anyone? Asa ani ang, in this example, in this monthly bills, asa da ani ang index? Unsa?
1, sir.
Okay, ang numbers. Alright? Ang numbers mao na siya ang index, meaning depending kung unsa imong gisulod sa imuhang on these objects. For example, let's review. All right, for example, for water bills, it should be saved in index 5. Yan na. So what am I going to do if, let's say, I'm going to review the files or my bills from for water bills? Inana. So I'm going to open up folder number 5. Diba? For electric bills, if electric bills will be stored in folder number 4, then for me to be able to access my electric bills, I just have to open up folder number 4. Diba? So basically, mura siya gastora ka og file sa imo folder, but those folders will be labeled with numbers. And for you to access the values or the contents of that folder, you just have to select which folder number to open up so that you can access the values or basically the files or something like that. Okay, so that is an example of an array. So now let's move to a much more understandable, let's say, programming terminologies. Again, this is an example of an array. An array can contain anything a variable can contain. So basically, it's just going to be similar with variables, but an array can have multiple values. So just like in our example, if this is going to be our variable, let's say monthly bills, you can have up to 5 or let's say more folders or objects inside your variable, and these objects can have its own values. So that is what you call a variable, an array. So again, an array can contain anything a variable can contain. So it could be either a string, it could be either numbers like float or integers, or an array can also store another array. Okay? So, di ba ang sa variables, for PHP variables, we just have to write the variable name and then perhaps initiate the value, like it could be either string or numbers or characters, so on and so forth. For array, you can also store another array. Sumura kag ang folder naapay sulod nga lain nga folder. Nakasulay mo ana sa inyong, let's say, sa inyong balay nga ang inyong folders, let's say sa imong mga projects sa school, ang imong folder naapoy sulod nga laing folder. Nakasulay ba ta na?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, mura siya an array inside another array. So, an array can also contain another array, and we'll talk more about it in just a moment. So, do you get the idea, the general idea of array? Nagets ra ba? Ayang idea?
Yes, sir.
Or bag
Sir.
Just imagine,
Yes, sir.
siguro para
Yes, sir.
mas ma-relate sa inyo ha. I'm not sure if you keep your projects from school, but most of the time imong isulod sa folder imong projects and you store it in your shelf, in your cabinet. Now for you to be ganahan kang i-open na nimo ang imong, let's say imong project sa programming 1 or ITS 101. Ganahan kang i-view ang imong projects na gi-save nimo sa ITS 101 nga folder, then you just have to open that folder. And same case with array. But instead of labeling it with, let's say, ITS 101, ITS 102, instead of labeling those folders with letters or with words, we're going to label it with, unsalang gani?
Numbers, sir.
Numbers. Alright, and these are called index. Okay, so basically when you say the label, in programming term, it's called index. Meaning, for example, this is index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5. It's just the same with label 1, label 2, label 3, label, and so on. Alright? So this type of array, however, is called indexed array because it is labeled with numbers or integers. So again, these are called an indexed array. So that means there are three types of array. We have index arrays, associative arrays, and multi-dimensional arrays. We will start with indexed arrays. So pretty much kato atong gisgutan ron is an example of index array. We'll talk more about the other type of arrays later on. But let's start with an index array. So if you have a list of items, let's say a list of car names, for example, storing the cars in a single variable could look like this. Exacto ba? If we're going to write the names of cars, let's say it should be in a single variable, it will look like this, correct? In PHP?
Sir.
Alright, so for example, okay, mao ni sa PHP, kana siya. Variable car 1 is Ford, car 2, BMW, cars 3 is Toyota. So that is how we're going to write variables in PHP. Now, it's well and good. Basically, if we have, let's say you have a list of cars that you want to use in your program, we can store it in a single variable just like this. However, the problem arises if you have, what if naakay 300 instead of 3? So what if there are 300 cars or car, let's say, brands that you want to store in your program? So, and lisod kayo kung atong buhaton is magama ta og variable in each of those car brands. Let's say if there are 300 cars, you'll have to create 300 variables, di ba? It's not really that practical. It's not going to be practical. So the solution is to create an array. So basically, an array can be useful if there are tons of values to be used in your program. So if daghan na kaayo nga variable, or daghan na kaayo nga variable imong gamiton sa imong program, then disregard using variables, use an array. So that is the use of an array. An array can hold many values under a single name, and you can access the values by referring to an index number. So in this example, let's proceed na lang to the next page. For example, we will create an array that contains the following numbers. So we have here an array of numbers. We have 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. Now, if we're going to write it in a variable, it will look something like this. So for example, we're going to create one. Let's say var 1 is equals to 4, and then var 2 is equals to 8, var 3 is equals to 15. Ina na ba? So magbinagsa ka. Kung gamit ta og single nga variable, we'll have to do something like this. Magbinagsa tahantod mahuman. So it's good for if we're just going to deal with a few variables. But if we're going to, let's say, if we're going to deal with, let's say, hundreds of data or hundreds of data or hundreds of variables, then this will no longer be very practical. So that's what the solution is, to create an array. So how do we create an array out of this? It's going to look something like this. So we will write our variable name or our array name, but still, it's still a variable name anyway. And let's call it our numbers. For example, that's gonna be our variable name. And then for us to store all of this value, we just have to write it this way. We will write array, and then nah, oops, and then 4, 8, 15, 16, so on. Okay? So if we're going to compare this single variable and array, asa siguro ang mas practical?
Array, sir.
Ang
Array,
array.
sir.
It's because it
Array,
will
sir.
save a lot of time with coding, and at the same time, it will also be more useful once we'll be doing or we'll be using it for our program. Okay? So the code above outputs 8. Okay, let's try this. Let me try this using our editor. Let's create a file. Let's call it array.php, and we will try the code that I've shown you on the screen. Maklaro pa or i-zoom in pa na ako? Okay na ni?
Klaro ra, sir.
Maklaro na. Very good. Alright, so we just have to kani ato ni kopyahon ni we're going to create a simple array of these numbers. So let's open up our text editor, and then we'll start it with the PHP tag, and let's say we will create a variable here, let's say numbers, and the value of the variable number would be an array. So we have array, and then we'll write 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 23, and 42. Okay, so we have an array of numbers. We have 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. So basically that's it. That is how we're going to create an array. So how are we going to use the value inside this array? So that is where the index comes in, di ba? Gaya sa atong definition, we talk about index. So how are we going, for example, there are multiple values in our array. Unsa na to paggamit bisag kanang usa lang ka buok out of these values. So that is where the index or the label comes in. So if you can remember, gaina, when we talk about array, the definition is it's gonna be indexed, or meaning labela na to. So we will, for example, we're going to display number 15. We're going to display the number 15 on the screen. So how are we going to do that? Of course, we'll still use the echo function. So we'll say echo, and then the variable name, we have here numbers, and then the index number. Okay, so we write here the variable number, the variable name, and then after that, for example, if we're going to display only number 15, can in 15 the value, after we write the variable, we will write the index. So how to write the index? We will enclose it with brackets. Okay, brackets, and then the index name, index number. So if this, what do you think? Unsa siguro idea ninyo? For example, what would be the index for number 15? Any idea?
15.
10, sir.
Ha? 15 ang index? Okay,
Three.
let's go back to our definition a while ago. Kani, for example, ganahan ko nga i-save, i-open nako ang car payments. Unsa nga index nako ibutang? Unsa akong index ibutang?
3.
3, di ba?
Three.
3 dire.
Sir.
Okay? So, here, if ganahan ko i-display ang value nga 15, what would be the index?
3.
Okay, let's try.
Three.
Okay, let's try 3.
Okay, sir.
Alright, so let's try 3. Let's input the number 3 in there, meaning we're only trying to display the value that belongs to index number 3. Okay, let's try that. Let's save, and let's open up our Chrome. And then let's say localhost its, and then discussion / array.php. Uy, ang display 16 lagi. Let's check. 16 man. So we have 1, 2, 3. Nganong kaniyang gi-display? What do you think happened? Ang index 3 daw is 16.
Kay 3 ikatulo mo siya, sir.
Diba? So if
Sugod.
3,
Let's
1, 2,
start from
3,
zero.
4. Okay, that's correct.
Oh, yes, sir. Oh.
An index will start with
I
0.
start 1, 0, sir.
Start siya og 0. Hold on. Alright. The code about, for example, in this example, we write 1, meaning index 1, and it outputs 8 because the objects positioned in an array are indexed or numbered starting from 0. So in this example, 0 is 4, 1 is 8, 2 is 15, 3 is 16, 4 is 23, 5 is 42. So, unsa na to para ma-display ang 15? What would be the index number?
2, sir.
2. Okay, so let's
sir.
try numbers index 2 and then
4, sir.
2 because
sir.
mag-start ta og 0, di ba? So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if we're going to display number 15, it should be index 2. Let's try. Oops, numbers. Let's reload. Isa. Ay, sorry.
Sir.
Ano na lang, space na lang na to. Erase na lang na ako ng isa. Let's save that and let's reload. Here, it displayed 15. So remember, when in writing writing a variable, the index should always start with 0. So in this example, we have here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we're going to display number 42, we should write index 5. So if we're going to save that and let's reload, it will display 42. Okay, so remember that an array can store any values just like a variable. So it could be either a string, numbers, and another array. So in this example, we use integers or numbers. So let's try another type of data type down. Another data type rather. So let's say we're going to create variables for our cars. Atong sa ato ang example gaina. This. So okay, let me create another break line, and then let's open up, or let's write our PHP script, and we're going to declare a variable named car. Okay, and then we'll save it with an array of the brand names of cars. So let's start with, let's say, Ford, Toyota, Volkswagen, let's say Nissan, and Honda. Alright, so let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values for our car array. Now, same thing, let's try to display. By the way, the concatenation will also be applied here, okay? So for example, we're going to concatenate strings with the value of our variables. So let's say echo I love, and then for example, we're going to display the value of, let's say, Ford. All right, so to display the value of Ford, we will say car, and then the index, unsa index sa Ford?
0.
0.
0.
Okay, because again, remember, it should always start with 0. And then right now we are concatenating, meaning we are combining text and variables or arrays in this method. So, and then we'll say cars. If we're going to save that, oops, let's reload, let's save, and then reload. We'll say I love Ford cars. Let me add space. That's it. So basically, we're able to use the word for because it is a value on our array which is index 0. So how about, let's say we're going to replace it with Nissan. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So we would replace it with 3. And if we're going to save that, it's going to say, I love Nissan cars. So basically, this is why index is very important in an array. Remember that in the definition, an array will be index ordered, meaning all the values that we store in our array must be indexed, or meaning it should be labeled. Okay? And basically, this is an example of an index array. That's why it's called index array, because we label each values with numbers. Okay, so first we have here butang nato dire of integers. So we have integers at the top, and then we have here cars. Let's call it strings. Diba? Kaya sa definition daw, we can store string, numbers like float and integer, and another array. So this time, we'll try to use, let's say, a mixed of integers, cars, and array. So we'll create another line here, and then let's say mixed, meaning naa siya string, naa siya integer, and array. But do you follow, guys, or am I talking too fast?
Okay ra, sir.
Okay, ra.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Alright, so again,
Okay,
going back
yes.
to our definition, we can store string, numbers, and array. So far, we've already done with numbers and string. This time, we're going to mix string with numbers with an array, and with another array. Murapag folder inside another folder. Alright, so we'll create our variable, let's say mixed. And then, first is, of course, we will write the array nga word, and then inside of, and then the parentheses, and inside the parentheses would be the value. So if you can remember previously or last meeting, we should always enclose string with double quote, diba? Double quote or single quote, correct? Can you still remember?
Yes, sir.
For
Yes, sir.
example, in this case, since Ford is a string, we enclose it with double quote. In the previous example, since this is number, we don't necessarily have to enclose it with anything. So if it's numbers, let's say integer or float, do not enclose it with anything, the values, I mean. But if it's a string, enclose it with double quote. So same thing with how we're going to write mixed values of an array. So for example, let's say 1. So since 1 is a string, 1 nga word, so we enclose it with double quote. How about the next one would be, let's say, integer 2. Alright? So basically that works. Since 1 is a word, meaning it is a string, and then since 2 is an integral number, meaning this is an integer, so we didn't enclose it with anything. Now let's add let's say, a float. So we have here string, integer, and float. And then lastly, we're going to write another array. So how are we going to write another array? Simply just write array and then another parenthesis. Alright? So the same thing. We have here a string, we have here an integer, we have here a float, and array. So inside the array would be the values of those arrays. So it could be either another string, let's say x, y, and then let's say 5. Alright? So we have here an array within an array. So actually, we can add another array gapon, right? And then the process continues. Okay, basically, murapag folder inside the folder, and then that folder also contains another folder, so on and so forth. There's no limit as to how many arrays you can store in one array. So we have here a string, an integer, a float, and a variable. So how do we write an array inside another array, basically it's just going to be the same. Same ra sa itong gibuhat, ani, we're just going to copy that and then paste that inside our array. Do you follow?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So let's try. Let's try to display
Yes, sir.
the values of these mixed arrays. So let's start with, let's say, echo and then mix. We'll start with the koan. We'll start with unang nga value, which is 1. So what would be the index number for that?
0.
0. Okay. So that's 0. And then
0.
let's add a BR, meaning break line. And then let's display number 2. Kani. So we have echo and then mix
Mix.
and then index
Then 1.
1. Alright.
1.
Z mo
And then
mixer.
let's say okay, thank you. Alright, mixed. And then ay kalimot kani BR is just a break line, concatenation of an HTML and variable. And then let's display the 3.14. So same thing, mixed, and then index 2. And then alright, the question now, unsaon na ako pag-display ang array? Since ang array has, this array has 3 values, let's say unsaon na ako pag-display ang y only. So we know that array is index, index 3, right? So we know that the array is index 3 because it is position 0, 1, 2, 3. Correct? Agree ba? Okay. So we know that the array is in index 3. However, I only want y. Ganana kung i-display is y. So how are we going to do that? It's just going to be the same. So we first write the position or the index of the array itself. So it's in position 3 or index 3. However, since we only have to display y, we need to determine which index na pod na bilong ang y. So asa siya na bilong ang index y dire? Oh, hindi. Asa nga index na bilong ang y? I mean,
1.
so 1.
1.
sir.
Okay, 1.
One, sir.
So that means we only have to add another index here that says 1. Okay? So again, first is we look for index 3, which is the array. And then since this is an array, mangita na pod ta og asa nga index within this array ug unsa atong ganahang i-display. So again, we will count from 0, which is 0, and then 1, and then 2. So since y belongs to index 1, then we write another index here, which is 1. So if we're going to save that, and then let's reload, it's going to say we have here 1, 2, 3, 3.14, and then y. Okay, so let's try to replace y with, let's say, 5. Kaning number 5. So it should be index 2, and if we're going to save that, here it is. Alright, do you copy?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Alright, so we have discussed, let's say, integers, and then we have strings, and we have mixed string, integer, and array. So that proves the definition that an array can contain anything a variable can contain. So we have a string, numbers, and another array. Alright, so right now, let's go back to our example here. We know for a fact we're able to display the value of our arrays, right? Na-display nato siya. However, what if you're going to replace these values? Unsa na to pag-replace may mga value na naa sa tong screen karon? For example, let's start from the numbers. I want, let's say, index number 2, which is 15, to be replaced. Ganan kong i-change na with any other numbers. So how are we going to do that? So it's going to be something like this. Just like variables, we can assign values or replace the value of an object in an array. So to do so, we will write the variable name and the index number, and then we will we're going to write the value of that array, the new value rather. So again, to add or to replace the value of an array, first is we will write the array name or the variable name, and then the index array or the index of the array, and then the new value. Okay, so let's try. Ganahan ko nga ang diri na lang ta. Ganahan ko nga ang Volkswagen is lang ako o lain nga value. So to do so, I'm just going to write the variable name, which is car, and then the index. What is the index for Volkswagen?
2, sir.
2.
2. Alright,
2.
so index 2, and then equals the new value. Let's say Ferrari. The spelling Ferrari kana? Ferrari kana. Alright, so this is how we're going to replace the or assign the value of an array. So first is we'll write the array name or the variable name, and then the index number of the array, and then the new value. So if we're going to display that, let's say ato i-display nagbalik, so echo car index 2. So instead of Volkswagen, it should now display Ferrari. So let's track. Let's save that and let's reload. So we have here, it says here Ferrari. Oh, hold on. Let me change that my code. Let me copy this na lang. Let me copy this, and then let me paste it right here. But instead of car 3, let's say car 2. Then it's instead of saying Volkswagen, it should now display I love Ferrari cars. Okay, so how about let's replace the other car name. Let's say car let's replace Toyota with something else. Okay, for example, let's replace Toyota. Which index Toyota belong?
1, sir.
1. All right,
1.
so let's replace
1,
Toyota
sir.
with let's say Lamborghini. Oh, Lamborghini. All right, so and then let's display it. Let's say echo but I love, and then display the Lamborghini car, which is car index 1 more. So again, this is just a concatenation. So first it will display I love, and then index 2, which is Ferrari cars, but I love car index 1, which is Lamborghini more. So let's save that and then let's reload. Then it will say I love Ferrari cars, but I love Lamborghini more. Lamborghini cars more. Okay. Alright, so basically that's it. That's how we're going to store a value on an array. However, how about this? Unsa na to pag-replace ning a value, the array within an array. So basically it's just going to be the same thing. So for example, we're going to declare, let's say, mixed, and then asa nga array, third array,
3.
third index. So that's gonna be 3. And then which, for example, ganahan ta nga replacean ang 5. So same thing, we will write the index for 5, which is unsa?
2.
2, and then equals, and then let's say isla nato na og z. Alright, so and then we'll replace it with kanihimo nato na 2. So instead of displaying 5, it should display z. Let's try. Here it is. It says z because we're able to replace it or store a new value to an array. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay.
Answer.
And so far,
Answer.
right? And so
Answer.
far. Okay, so there is another way. By the way, this is for version 5.4 or newer. There is a shorter syntax in writing an array. So, kani atong gidiscuss. Kadali lang sa wait sa kadali lang ha. Alright, again, there is a shorter version in writing an array. This is for PHP versions 5.4 and newer. So, this is what we've been doing. This is a long array syntax. So, muna itong gibuhat, array, to write an array. So, first is we'll write the variable name, and then array, and then parentheses, and then the value of those array. A shorter way of doing it is just equals, and then instead of writing the word array, just and then parentheses, the value will be stored within a bracket directly. It's going to be the same thing. So once you'll be doing a programming from this point and on, you can either use the long version, the long array syntax, or the shorter array syntax. So let's just try that to make sure that it works. So for example, this one right here, instead of writing array, we can replace it with bracket. And it should work. Let's try. Let's save that. Let's see if we get any error. Okay, no error. That means it also works. So again, you can either use this way, the short way, or the long array. The reason why akong gi-discuss is katong long array because most programming, maybe some of the web hosting, wala pa siya go support of newer version of PHP. If I'm not mistaken, right, the latest version for PHP is 7. I'm not. Let's check.
Yes, sir.
Let's say latest PHP version. So far is 7.4 daw ang latest na version. But maybe there are some web hosting companies or services that still uses an older version of PHP. That's why I've used the long array syntax. But again, you can either use the long syntax or the shorter syntax. It doesn't really matter for our projects. So, do you have any questions before we proceed with the next type of an array of arrays? Any more question? Wala. Let's proceed with associative arrays.
None, sir.
Okay. Alright, good. Now, this time let's talk about associative arrays. It is an object index collections of objects called keys instead of integer. Now, remember, gaina, sa associate or sa index array, we label our folders with numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Diba? That is for index arrays. For object or associative arrays, however, we will index our, let's say, our folders, kumbaga, with an object. So, in this called keys. So, for example, let's move it to a non-programming terminologies. So, for example, this is gonna be our monthly bills. So, we're going to create folders for phone bill, electric bill, car bills, internet bills, mortgage. So, every time that we're going to, let's say, we're going to store the water bill for the month of May for water. Dapat water any, sorry. Instead of phone, imagine instead of phone, it's water bill. So let's store the water bill for the May inside, let's say, to the water folder. Inana. And then for the electric bills, let's save it in the folder that is labeled with electric bills. And then internet for the internet, cars, so on. So instead of using numbers this time, we'll be using an object, an actual object. It's called keys. Alright? So instead of numbers, for associative arrays, we will use an object. So we will label our folders with an object, the actual object. So which is called, in this case, it's called keys. Now the same thing if we're going to, let's say, ganahan kong i-retrieve ang files inside my electric bills, then I just have to open up the files inside the electric bills folder. Diba? Same thing. Murag mas sayon siyang subton because the label is actual names, actual objects, actual strings. Instead of just numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the folders will be labeled with actual names. So siguro mas sayon siya, diba? Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mas sayon siguro siya. It's because the label is clearer instead of just numbering. Now, there will be difference. Kano sa tamo gamit og index array and associative array. We'll talk more about it in just a moment. So same thing, and using an index object or object index collections, we're just going to pull out the details or the value according to the object or the keys basically. Yan na. So the combination of key and value is referred to as key-value pair. So we have here key and value, and then together they are called key-value pair. Associative arrays must always have a series of keys and values. So this is really important to understand that in associative arrays, there should always be a key and a value. Sa gaina, atong ginabuhat gaina sa index array, we just write the value right away, di ba? But in associative array, they should always have a series of keys and values. So the difference between an associative arrays and index arrays is this. Index arrays will be used when order is important. So if kinahanglan nato nga i-order, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, i-list nato ang details or ang value, then we will use index. However, we will use associative arrays when having a reference label is most important. So if dili ra ta magmatter sa iyang pasunod sa values, however, we matter more on the label itself, the reference, then we will use associative array. So for example, to keep a list of 100 customers, we will use index array. Let's say you have 100 customers nga ni palit nimo, ni palit sa imuhang, let's say, products. Then for you to be able to store those 100 customers, you have to create an index array. We will use an index array, and those customers will be given with its own index. Diba? Maybe another example is mga students sa NORSU nga ni-enroll sa NORSU. So each student will be given an ID number, correct? To know nga ikaw na, for example, let's say si Kadusale, she is, let's say, student ID number 001, something like that. So since there are, let's say, 2,000 students in NORSU, I'm not sure what is the actual population, but that's just an example. Since there are 2,000 students in NORSU, then each student will be given with an ID number. All right, same thing. If there are 2,000 students, we will use index, meaning na siya ID number. However, to keep the customer's personal record, let's say we talked about Kadusale. So Kadusale is, let's say, enrolled with BS Information Technology. Si Palomas, enrolled siya sa Computer Science. Si Bato, enrolled siya sa Criminology. So these details, however, wala na siya nagmatter og unsa nga if magpasunod ba or dili. Because wala na siya nagmatter. What matter is ug asa na bilong ang unsa ang kurso ni Kadusale, ni Palomas ug ni Bato, di ba? Therefore, we will use an associative array. So again, remember, if kinahanglan ang pagpasunod, ang list, we will use index. And then kung we're going to, if kinahanglan na nga mo refer if kinahanglan na ta og reference label, then that is where we're going to use associative array. Do you follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir ba? Okay,
Yes, sir.
let me repeat myself. If to keep a record of, let's say, 2,000 students in NORSU, then each student will be given an ID number. So that is the same with index array. Naa siya iyang kaugalingon nga lista, and each student or each object will be given a unique number, a unique index, or let's say, in other words, student number in this case. However, to know whether or not, let's say, Kadusale, let's say, BS Information Technology siya, si Palomas, Criminology, something like that. So since the ID number does not matter anymore because we talk about the course naman, meaning one particular detail for the student, then that is the time that we'll be using associative array. I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. Do you? Nagets ra ang difference nilang dua?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good. Okay,
Sure.
so how do we define an associative array? So this is how we're going to write it. First is we will write the variable name, same thing, and then the word array for longer syntax, And then we have here a key and a value. So remember that in associative array, there should always be a key value pair. Always. Meaning, again, always have a series of keys and values. So again, to write an associative array, we will write the key, meaning our folder, and then the value of that folder. It's not really folder, it's called object. A key. So we have here a key and the value, and notice that naa siya murag arrow. Equal sign and then close angle bracket. Basically, it looks like an arrow and then value. And same thing, if the key, since this is a string, then it should be enclosed with double quotation. And the value depende ra gihapon. If it's the value is a string, then you have to enclose with double quote. But if it's integral values, let's say numbers or float, then no need for the double quote. And then if you want to add more, the same thing. Place a comma next to it, and then another key, and then another value, and then to add more, same thing, comma, and then key and a value. Alright, so let's try that. Let's create a new file. Let's say assoc array.php, and then same thing, and then let's rename it with associative array. Okay, so for example, we're going to create an associative array for first name and last name. So first we will write our PHP tag. So let's say assoc. The variable name would be assoc, and then let's say array, and then parenthesis, and then first name. So this would be our first key, first name. And then sunod ana unsay sunod gani for us to write an associative array. After we write the key, unsay sunod?
Value.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
but okay, before the value we have to write katong murag arrow, right? So that's equals and then close angle bracket and then the value. So let's say Julius. Gitataglayin. Si ang nakita na ako dito sa screen si Fernadette. Okay, Fernadette. All right. So that's the first name. So that is how we're going to write an associative array. First we write the key and then the value. So that means Fernadette is a first name. Nana ba? So we'll write the key and then the value. Now to add more associative to add more value, unsa na to? Write a comma and then same thing, we'll write the key, let's say last name, and then the value, we write the equal sign and then close angle bracket, and then let's say Horolan. That's it. So in this example, we only have two for the sake of discussion. So we have here two values. We have here the first name and last name. But this time, the first name contains an actual value, which is Bernadette, and then for the last name is Horolan. So the difference between this and katong Gaina is that if we're going to write this in a katong index array, unsa na to pagsulat? Ang Bernadette o ang Horolan using an index array. Can you help me? Asok. So if this is an index array, unsa na to pagsulat? Anaon lang na to. Bernadette and Horolan. However, we cannot call this value a first name and we cannot call this a last name. Unsa lang gani din siya? Instead of first name, unsa lang ni siya dire? This is gonna be index 0 and index 1. So instead of 0 and 1, using the associative array, we can now use an actual name, which is in this case, this is first name and this is last name. So let's try that. Let's try to display it. echo, and then the variable name, and then instead of index number, we will write the key, which is in this case, let's say first name, and then let's save that, and then let's reload sock array.php. Oops. Hold on. Sayop. Tara. Okay. So we can add more. To concatenate, same thing. Type in dot and then space, and then kana, and then let's to write the variable name. The last name, however, unsaon na to? How do we write the kaning word, kaning value? Anyone?
Last name.
Sige, go ahead ba to? Go ahead ba to?
Last name, sir.
Last name. But unsaon na? Please tell me unsa ako i-type dire. Go ahead. Or anyone who would like to help me write this value here.
Bracket, sir. Ay,
Saman. Ganan ko i-display
Asok, sir,
ang last
asok.
name.
Asok,
Okay.
sir.
That's
Asok,
right.
sir, asok.
Sige, go ahead. Go ahead sa
Last
banal.
name.
Go ahead sa banal, Alray. Go
The
ahead.
$sign,
Okay, dollar
asok,
sign,
then kitong bracket circuit
bracket,
tayo, double quotation mark, yung
uh,
last name.
last name. Alright, that's correct. Okay, thank you, sa banal. Alright, so same thing, we write, for us to write the variable, the value, first we write the value, variable name, and then the index. So remember, this time the index is no longer 1, 2, 3, 4. The index is the key. Kanang last name. So let's save that. Let's reload. We'll say just like that. Okay. So let's replace. Let's go down. Let's add another example.
Lene.
Age,
Ah.
sir.
Ha?
Age.
All right. Ang ito na pataglain na po instead of aside sa personal information. Let me close this first. Let's add another one. Na asa ko. Okay. For example, naa kay imuhang car. Okay, car na lang. Car owned. Alright. So let's say ang car ni Bernadette is, let's use another variable car and then array. Let's say the brand. So again, ang brand is, let's say, Ford, and then ang model is Mustang. So we have the brand and the model as our index, correct? So let's start with the brand. That would be our first key. And then for how let's say ang value sa brand is Ford. How am I going to write it? Anyone? So we already have the key here. Okay, lahi na pod. Anyone? So for example, ganahan ko nga ang brand is Ford Mustang. Okay?
Rolls
So the
Royce.
brand is Ford and then the model is Mustang. So we'll start with the brand. How am I going to write the value?
Brand ayun. Kitong
Okay, lahi na
equal
pod.
sign ayun.
Okay, it's okay sa banal. Lahi na pod, try na to ang uban daw. Anyone?
Okay, sir.
Equal sign, sir.
Okay, Legara, go ahead.
Then
Equals.
arrow.
Alright, and then?
Equal sign, arrow.
Dayon.
The value.
Okay, before na ako isulat ang value, unsa pa may dapat na akong i-type?
Double quotation.
For sure? That's correct. Okay, double quote, and then Mustang. Okay, thank you. Ay, brand, Ford pa di, sorry. Ford. Alright, Okay, thank you, Ligara. This time we're going to add the model. Okay, who would like to help me write the model? Sige na. Anyone who would like to help me add the model? We already added the Ford, which is the brand, and then kani. Saan na to pag-add ang model? Anyone?
Double quotation, sir, and
Okay, Olengay,
model.
sige. Alright. Double quote. And then, isa
Dep-
to?
and model.
Model. Dayon.
And equal sign and arrow.
Dayon ka na po.
And double quotation Mustang.
Alright. Okay, thank you. Alright, thank you, Olengay. Alright, so basically we're able to create an array, an associative array, that the first index is brand and the value is Ford, and then the second index is model, and then the value is Mustang. Now, there are no limits, guys, okay? You can add more. Right now, we only use 2, but you can add more. So let's say, add ba taog year, dere, let's say year, and then let's say 2022. Alright, so let's say palitan ay yung car is 2022 Ford Mustang or something like that. So you can add more. There are no limits to how many values you're going to store in an array. Okay, so let's try to display that. Who would like to help me display the values? Ganatong i-display ni nga word kanang 2022 Ford Mustang. Who would like to help me display it? Gila yun.
Volunteer.
Echo, sir.
Lain na
PHP
po.
Echo.
Try na to. Tagad sa natong chance ng ubad. Wala?
Volunteer kasi volunteer.
Na guys, kay wala man tay face to face nga klase kay face to face pa taron ipasulat man ako ni sa blackboard. Kinumdum mo sa una sa whiteboard. Ipasulat sa whiteboard na. But since wala man taga face to face, so try to ka na lang. Try.
Sir.
Kadasali, go ahead. Again, we are going to display 2022 Ford Mustang. Go ahead.
Echo, dollar
Echo.
sign, car,
Okay.
open and close bracket,
Mhm.
tapos inside year.
Okay. Alright. Dayon.
Sir.
Sige ka na sa. Kinsa bay laing musumpay. Ganahan musumpay. Thank you kadasali. Kinsa ganahan musumpay. Ganahan kong i-add ang Ford, ang word nga Ford. Anyone?
Ako, sir. Period.
Bato. Sige. Period. And then,
Ayun, kuan. Sa tawagan na sa limot ko.
dollar sign?
Dili.
Or double
Kanang
quote?
quotation.
Kana, sige. Given na lang sana. Given na lang natin eh. So again, for us to add a space between the 2022 and Ford, we have to add this. Correct? Okay. Go ahead, Bato. Murag nawala si Bato.
Sir?
Murag putol. Ang sala, putol-putol imong line. Ang sala day? Sunod after ani?
Kuan, dollar sign, car.
Okay. And
Ayun,
then?
bracket.
Bracket.
Ayun, brand.
Alright, brand. Okay. Is that correct, guys? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Alright.
Yes.
Thank you, Bato. What else? Kinsay ganahan para mubutang sa model? This one right here. Would like to help me add a model?
Ako, sir.
Go ahead, Rubita.
sir.
That, then double quotation,
Mhm.
that, then dollar sign, car, then bracket.
Go ahead. Dayon.
Pero ka
What should...
kadungog, sir?
Medyo naputol. Alright, after the inside the bracket, unsa ibutang nato dire?
Double quotation, sir, dayon
Ah.
model.
Alright, okay. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you again sa to, si Robite. Alright, let me erase this and let's check. Let's save that and then let's reload. Let's see if magawas ba na siya. Alright, it says here, car owned 2022 Ford Mustang. Alright, so very good everyone. So basically, if we're going to compare it with the index array, instead of using numbers as our index para sa index array, in associative array, always remember that instead of numbers, we will use actual names or actual labels. So basically, that is how we're going to. First is for us to define the variable. The array. We need to first write the key. For example, in this example, we have brand, that is our key, and Ford is the value. And there should always be an arrow. And how do we write the arrow? Equal sign and close angle bracket. And then to add more, simply add comma and then go, so on. Do you have any questions, guys? Nasabtan
That's
ang
sir.
arrays?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, why is it important? By the way, why is it important? Importante ba dining arrays when we are trying to create a website? Yes, it's very important, especially if you're dealing with database already. So obviously, sooner once we're done with the PHP discussion, we will continue working on our website, katong sa atong e-commerce na website, and we'll be dealing with database na. We'll be dealing with lots of data for us to be able to make it work, di ba? Para maka-add ta og product. In my case, akong website mo add ko og shoes. And how am I going to display it on the screen? How am I going to display those, let's say daghan na kay kong na-add nga shoes sa akong database, and those shoes contains brand, contains model, contains description, it also contains photographs, di ba? How am I going to display those in our screen? That's the time that we're going to use variables. Now, obviously, this type of variables, kani nga pamaagi sa pag-write of variables, is an easy one. We will go into, once we're dealing with database soon, this will be mo level up na siya pretty hard. Okay? But anyway, at least you already get the idea. Sorry, go ahead, Torres. May question si Torres? Wala di eh. Okay, mute na lang na ako. Alright. Okay, that's it. So basically, that is what arrays are all about. Next is, let's talk about, okay, assigning values pa rin. Pwede na human. Assigning values. Na-discuss ba na ako? Parang wala pa. Okay, basically, it's the same thing, guys. It's the same thing with what we're doing with the index array, for us to store a new value, or for us to store new value to our associative array. Same thing. Let's say for example, instead of Ford, instead of Mustang, let's replace it with something else. Let's say let's replace it with, let's say, GT. So for us to do so, let's write our PHP script, our tag, and then same thing, we'll write the variable name, which is car, and then we will write ug unsa atong islan, unsa nga index natong islan. So we will replace the model. So therefore, we will write here model, and then equals the new value. So let's say GT. Ana lang. So let's display. So let's try to display the echo, and then car, and then model. This time it should display something else. Let's save that and let's reload. Okay, nanay mo tang GT. Alright. Okay, let me erase this. Let me copy this na lang. Let me copy this. Let me paste it right here. Let's save that and let's reload. Tara. 2022 Ford GT. Alright, do you have any questions, guys, before we proceed?
No, sir.
Okay, this time around, diba, instead of saying Mustang, it will now say for GT. Okay, let's proceed. Array functions. Okay, so remember last meeting when we discussed about variables na ay different functions, right? Anyone give me an example of a string function? Usa ka at least string function lang. Can anyone give an example of a string function? Or sige na lang. What would be the unsay purpose of function based on your knowledge last meeting about data type functions? What would be the purpose of a function in PHP? Pinaka quick nga description or explanation. What is the purpose of functions in PHP? I-discuss na to na last meeting, mag-goal jud ko ulay makainom do.
Sir, functions allow easier and faster coding processes.
Okay. Alright, kinsa to? Si Ulingay? Alright.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ulingay. Alright, that's right. Functions basically it allows easier coding process because the good thing about PHP is that nana siya yung mga gigama nga function daan that will just make it easy for us to code because dili nam ta kinahanglan nga di na nato kinahanglan i-write ang tibuok nga code. Alright? Di na nato kinahanglan nga i-write or isulat ang tibuok nga code, tibuok nga source code rather, or functions. Sorry. Dili na nato kinahanglan i-write ang tibuok code because PHP already done it for us and all we need to do is just use that predefined codes or also called functions. So again, these are some functions for arrays. We have count, max, minimum, sort, reverse sort, implode, explode. So imagine lang this count, max, minimum. So they have different functionalities, right? Na siya ikaw galingon yung functions. And for us to use supposedly for count, example, the count will allow us to. Unfortunately, wala na ako nabutang this. Okay. Unfortunately, wala na ako nabutang definition. But for example, in count, iyang i-count og pila ka buok arrays. Pila ka buok arrays or values inside an array. Okay? So in reality, daghan kay tang i-write ana nga code. However, using functions, all we need to do is just use the word count and the function it will automatically use the functions that will allow us to count the arrays or the values inside an array. Okay? So let's try that. Let's try each of these functions and let's see what it does. Let's open up our editor. Let's create a new file. Let's say array function PHP, and let's rename it as array functions. Alright, so let me just copy and paste it para madali ta. So for example, we have here an array numbers, which is 8, 23, 15, 42, 16, and 4. Now, the first one would be count. The first function is count. Basically, it will just it returns the numbers of objects in an array. Pila ka buok object or key in an array. So let me hide this real quick. So let's say count, and let me write it down. So we have here PHP, and we'll display echo and then count, and then variable numbers. Okay, what it does is it returns the number of objects o pila ka buok objects within the array. So that is count. So again, to write it, we have to write the function name, which is count, and then a parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis would be the array. So if we're going to save that, and then let's open up our browser, and let's say array underscore function dot php. First, it will say 6. Okay, it counted 6 objects. Is it correct? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is the first function that we're going to discuss. Basically, it will count how many functions there, how many objects, or yeah, how many objects there is in the array. So that's the first function. That's another one. Next is we will try max. Okay, what max does is it returns the objects with the maximum value. So again, max will return the object that has the maximum value. So it pertains to integral or integer ng mga values. So here in this case, this is our array, and ang maximum man daw. If ang max function will display or will return, asa na ron? Oops. If ang max array, a max function will display the maximum object, or I'm sorry, the object that has maximum value, unsa siguro ang iyang i-display? Unsa maximum ani nga value in this array?
42.
42. Alright, so let's try
42.
that. Max. Let's try that. PHP and then echo max and then the variable name, which is numbers. Let's try that. Tanaw na to 42 ba dyan? Let's save that and then let's reload. Okay. Alright, that's right. It displays 42 because that is the maximum value in a maximum object in our variable, in our array. Next is we have minimum. So basically it's the opposite. The minimum value of the minimum object of the array, that's gonna be what it's going to display. So for example, min, let's say kompleto na lang na to, minimum and then maximum. Alright, so basically it will return the minimum value. Unsa siguro minimum value ane?
4.
Alright, okay, let's check if 4 ba jud. So basically, how do we write functions? First is we write the function name and then parentheses and then the variable name or the array, the name of the array. So, ana la, simple ra. And then let's add a br. Let's check that. Let's reload. Correct. It's 4. Next is we have sort. Okay, so the sort will allow us to display or arrange the values from least to maximum, pinakagamay to pinakadako. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure, but I think that's the sort. And then we have reverse sort, would be the other way around. So for sort, it will display from minimum to, it will rearrange the kani, diba? Kani random raman siya kayong pagka-arrange, but using the sort function, we'll be able to arrange them in ascending order. We say ascending order from the minimum to maximum. So let's try that. Let's say sort and then hold on, PHP no, let's start with sort first. Isort sa nato, for example, and then numbers. Alright, so right now we've sorted, in this function we've sorted the array from minimum to maximum, from the least value to the maximum value. So in general idea, it should start with 4 and end with 42, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now,
Yes,
how
sir.
do we display, however, how do we display the value of the array? Now, wa pa na ako ninatudlo, but to display the value of the array, all the values, or to display the actual array rather, we will use the printr na function. So, use the printr to display the variable, I'm sorry, the array. So, let's try that. Sumura siya inani ba? Okay, so first is we sort it from least to maximum, and then this time we're going to display it. So dili ni echo, Alright, dili echo. Same siyang function sa echo, but we're not gonna be using echo because echo is for string. For us to display our array, we will use print underscore r. Okay? So again, we will not use echo because echo is for strings. Print r would be for arrays. So what it does is we're going to save that, and let's reload here. It's going to display something like this. So we have here the index 0 is 4, index 1 is 8, and index 2 is 15. Nagpasunod siya, wala.
Sunod, sir.
Nagpasunod. Alright, so basically this is how we're going to display. This is the value of our array using print r function. Again, let's try what if butang ra nato echo. Let's save that and let's reload. Dili siya mo display using echo. Again, for us to display the value of array, we will use insalan gani?
Print R.
Print r. Okay? Actually, right now it will display in this way. Kani mo na iyang format, but there is another way to display it using an HTML called pre. Nalimot ko unsay meaning sa pre, but here's what's gonna do. Save that. Let's reload. Kana i-arrange niya og inani using the pre tag. Pasalan ang pasabot sa pre tag. Maybe akong ma-search nato na ron, but it will take time, so just gonna skip it. But again, for if you wanted to display the arrays in such an order nga medyo masayon siyang sabton, we will use the pre tag just like this. And then let's reload, and this is how it's gonna look like, just like that. So nagpasunod na siya. Ang index 0 is 4, index 1 is 8, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have nagpasunod siya pataas. Now, what if we're going to display it in descending order from greatest value to the lowest value, highest value to the lowest value? We will use rsoft. Okay, so let's try it again. This time let's call it reverse sort. Then we'll use the pre tag na pod. We'll write and then same thing, we have PHP and then r sort and then numbers, and then so again to pag display ni same thing, print r underscore r. Hold on. And then numbers. Let's save that and let's reload. Okay, reverse sort nabali na po from the and the index 0 has 42, 23, 16, 15, 8 and 4. Nagkabaylo na from from highest to lowest na po siya na sort. Next is we have implode and explode. So unfortunately wala ko nabutang diri ang definition. Later on after this class, I'm going to write the definition here so that once you download it you can read the description or the definition. But when you say implode, okay, it will allow us to add different values or different text, or basically it will allow us to add strings to the array. Okay, so let me just show you how it works. We'll write implode here. Implode. So for example, this one right here, we're going to display all of this, but this time we are going to add let's say asterisk. So every time that we'll write this number, na siya asterisk sa tunga. So that is called implode. So let's try that. So first is we'll say we'll create a new variable. Let's call it num underscore string. Basically, we're going to convert our array to a string. Okay. Siguro muna yung mas maayo nga example. We will convert our array into a string. So since we're going to convert it, we can add text to it already. So again, first is we're going to create a new variable name since we're going to convert it, di ba? Ato i-convert ang atong array, which is this one. We're going to convert it into a string. So we'll store it inside a variable num string, and then we'll write implode, and then parenthesis, and then let's say asterisk. Kana. So we will write asterisk between 8, 23, 15, 42, 16, and 4. So these numbers will be separated with asterisk. So we will write that this is a string, and then comma, and then the variable name, so which is numbers, and then kana. So what it does is it will add asterisk in each object of the array. Do you follow, guys?
Yes, sir.
Alright.
Yes, sir.
So butangan niya og asterisk between the numbers or between the objects. So let's try to display that. This time around, we can use echo. Since we convert it into string, we can use echo instead of print r. So echo, and then asterisk num string. Let's save that, and then let's reload. Kana. Diba? Remember, this is our array. We have 42, 23, 16, 15, 8, and 4. So this is an array. Kana, that's why we use print r. Now, using implode, we convert this into a string. Diba? We convert this into a string, and then we added asterisk in between them. Just like that. So, for example, let's replace the asterisk with something else. Let's say, instead of asterisk, let's say slash. Kana. Let's save that, and then let's reload. Kana. Just like that. Now, kanus siya gamit? Gamit din nani. This is useful, guys, once we are dealing with data. Kana na gani sa Excel. Alright? So, maybe one of these days, or maybe soon, you will encounter kanang ganing mga data nga naa sa Excel. Tagaan ka og data sa Excel, and then, for example, naa siya let me open up an Excel. Alright, let me open up an Excel. So, for example, na-value nga names, name of student, names na lang. For example, mo ni mga students, names sa mga students. Let's say kana. And then inside the names, you have here, let's say, Juleus Publico. Ayun, ang ngalan ako. Let's say we have Tony Stark. Leon. Username na lang, username. Okay. Usernames. So, na Tony Stark 0429 1995, and then naapoy Bruce Banner 11 11 1969, something like that. So for example, this is just an example. Let me zoom it in. Kanas agamit ng implode and explode. Allow me to give you a scenario. So you are given with a file, the document that contains these details. So we have sa pamalayan Steve Rogers 12 24 14 alright 1914. So what I'm talking about is, for example, you'll be given a file that contains something like this, and ganahan sila nga i-break it down with, let's say, first name, last name, and then date of birth. Okay? So ganahan ang client, or let's say, ganahan ka nga i-break down ang Tony Stark 04291995 to something like this. So obviously, for example, we have here Tony, and then this would be Stark, and then date of birth is 04291995. Inana. Yeah. Lisod kayo nga imong binagsa og type tanan. What if na kay 1,000 ka pin ka mga usernames here? And then ganahan ka nga automatic siyang ma-break into this, diba? We have here Tony Stark 04291995. So that is where implode, explode comes in. You'll have to break this down so that it will automatically turn into the first one with Tony, and then Stark, and then age, date of birth. So that is where the implode and explode, that will be our next function to discuss, comes in. You'll have to break the value of the array, and then you can convert it into string so that you can break it into separate nga mga nga array na pod. Alright? Nagets na yung idea? Huwag ka na siya magamit?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So inana ba?
Yes, sir.
Usually magamit siya in nga mga situations if you'll be if you're going to mo siyang i-break ang different details. So let's say for example, username, and then this username contains the first name, the last name, and date of birth. Nanayonin mo. And that is where the implode and explode comes into place if you're going to use the program. And then next is explode. So remember, this time we convert our array into string. Gibutan nato og slash. That's able to display this. Now explode will be able to break it. So that means every time nga makita siya og slash, iyang i-break, and it will convert it back to an array. So how do we do that? So basically murag reverse ba? So saan nato siya pagbuhat? We will write for example, we have here, let's say br, let's say explode. So tangtangon na po nato ang mga slashes. So for example, we will write another variable na pod. Di na lang. Let's just display the print r again. Since we are going to convert it back to an array, we'll use the print r. Not echo, but print r. So print r, and then explode, meaning, and then we're going to write another parenthesis inside, and this time around, tangtangon na to ang slash inside the num string. Alright? So basically, it will remove, let me add a comment, removes all slash in the array. So what it does is, pangitaon niya tanan nga mga slashes, pangitaon niya tanan mga slash, iyan ang i-remove and convert this string into an array. So let's save that. Let's reload. Tara. Alright, let's use the pre-text na pod, pre-tag para maklaro. And then close pre. Let's save that and let's reload. Okay, let me rearrange real quick. Alright, so again, ang implode, iyang gi-convert ang atong array into a string, and then we added slashes. Basically, you can add anything to it. In this case, we add slash. And then the explode, we remove the slash so that it will turn back to an array. Right? Do you have any questions?
Sir,
Go ahead, Ligara.
kanang implode o explode, sir, bahigon dyan niya ang numbers gikan sa greater value to less value.
No. The reason why nga dili siya mo work when it comes to sorting, but siguro nabantayan nimo nga nag-sort siya from top to bottom, right? Highest to lowest, because we already did it here. I-apply man ang ato ang reverse sort kay ina. So if ganahan ka nga wala na to ang reverse sort, then we just have to remove it in our code. Pwede na itong tangtangon ng sort and reverse sort. Let me erase that. Let me save it. And then, mabalik siya sa katong gaina. Atong original nga sort. But the only reason why nga nagpasunod siya because ato man siyang gisort gaina, di ba? Gisort nato siya. So ni carry over ang iyahang
Thank
sort.
you.
Okay, nagets ra Miss Ligara? Did I answer the question? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right, any other questions, guys, before we proceed? Before we end, this will be the last.
Yes, sir.
Wala na. All right. So these are not the only functions, okay? So actually, if mo adto ta sa, nalimot ko butang sa link. Sorry about that. But I think if we'll go to W3 schools, nadiridagan kayo mga functions. So let's go to reference and then PHP. Where are you? PHP, dala. PHP reference and then pangitaon sa nahog asa dapit ha. If we're going to scroll it down to dara, PHP reference and let's go to array, dara. So pinaka bottom na nakabutang PHP reference and an array. These are the list of functions. Dara. Muna yung mga functions in an array and we only discuss a few. Pila ka ba katong i-discuss ra? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are only 7 functions that we've discussed because that's pinaka-sayon siguro, ang pinaka-obvious. But there are, if I'm not mistaken, maybe several dozens of functions for array only. So if you want to learn more about it, just go to W3 schools, go to PHP, and then look for PHP array under the PHP reference, and you'll find it here all the reference for, or all the functions for array. Okay? Daghan kayo diri. Ganahan mo try, just go ahead and try it. And na po siya description kung sa iyang gamit. For example, let's find one. Array random returns one or more random keys from an array. So let's try that. So basically, it will display any kanang random ra siya nga mga objects. So let's try that. For example, here, let's say random. And then let's say PHP echo rand and then numbers. What it does is it will generate or it will display numbers inside, or it will display any of these objects. So we're going to save that and then let's reload. Hold on. Echo array run. Tara. So right now it says 2, but if you're going to reload it, it will display something else. Na kanan na 3 na po siya. Sunod, nahimo na po siyang 5. Nahimo na sunod, nahimo na po siyang 1. So basically, it will generate random numbers or random objects inside our array. Kana. Okay? So that's it. And hold on. Daghan pa. There are tons more of functions that you can use for arrays. So again, last, do you have any questions before we end? Wala na gyud?
Nice.
Okay, hapit na alas 12, mayra pod. Alright, so for your assessment, please open up Google Classroom na nakabutang assessment number 6. Create a PHP program to solve the following problem. So we have here an array of student grades. The first thing that you're going to do is display the student's highest grade. So obviously, sayon ra kay unsaon, di ba? So you just have to display the student's highest grade. And then second, you're going to replace the third grade with 91. So asa ang third grade ani? Kamoy bahala sa ana dapita. And then you have to display it again. Alright? So again, display the student's highest grade. That's the first thing that we're going to do. And then second, you're going to replace the third grade with 91. So open up our Google Classroom as assessment number 6, and then later on I will upload your assignment, another assignment that will give you 1 week deadline. But for the assessment, I'll give you up until 6 p.m. this afternoon to comply with the assessment. Okay? Do you have any question regarding the assessment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, don't bother with this one because lugay man tayo nakastart, 10 naman tayo nakastart
Sir.
because na mo exam. So, instead of 30 minutes, it's okay. I'll give you up until 6 p.m. to work with this assessment activity. And for your assignment, I'll be uploading it maybe this weekend na lang. Okay? Or karong ha. Napamag ko yung klase doon. So, anyway, I'm going to upload the assignment later on. Okay? Okay na?
Yes,
Nasab
sir.
ka na? Alright. So, I hope you guys
Yes, sir.
learned from something from today. I know nga medyo malimot